What's up, everyone? We're back. It's a Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. I am James Lynch. He is JHK. Apologies for being away last week. We had a number of things going on, behind the scenes, but we're back. We're going to be talking about Brad Riddell and Rafael Fiziev. If anyone hasn't watched the show before, basically we preview an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, like I just mentioned there, we're going to be talking about Fiziev and Riddell, which is actually going down on December 4th. So good timing with this. It's coming up right around the corner here. But before we get into the breakdown, got to remind everyone to download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app where you can get your picks on there. I forgot to put mine in, but I'll do it after this. It's on my list. So yeah, I'll get that in there. And also make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on this video. It's an easy way to support the channel and it helps us grow this show. So if you could do that, if you're watching, that would be great. Also, if you have any questions, post them in the chat. We'll get to them as soon as we're done the breakdown. That's how the show works. Part one is us doing the breakdown. Part two is us doing a Q&A. It can be about anything, but we like to kind of stick it to the fight at hand. But we'll see how this goes. Okay, so we have a banger of a fight. This is kind of a fight that, is, I guess, not one we would normally do because we normally just do main events or we do sort of like bigger names. But this is one for the people. This is a people's show today when it comes to doing this fight because these are two absolute studs in the lightweight division. And a lot of history there as well, and I'll let you kind of get into it. But as far as how we got here, which is usually where we start in the show, we got here because these two guys have been, doing quite well in the lightweight division, and they sort of need that test to see who the better up-and-comer is. I think that's how I look at this fight is, Fiziev's been on a nice roll, a little bit of, struggles in the Bobby Green fight at the end. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. But, he's a guy that is looking to get that next sort of big fight. And with Riddell, same sort of thing, coming off a nice win himself. So just your thoughts on how he got here with this fight, because there is some history. They used to train together.
Yes, there's a lot of history between these two. And, man, I didn't think that it was going to come this quick. I knew that these guys were going to fight each other, and it was going to be a hell of a fight. But I didn't expect it to happen when they're ranked like in between the 10 and 15 ranges. That's where they're sitting right now. I expected it to be like when they're in the top 10 or a title eliminator, but I guess since they train at different locations, Rafael's not even at Tiger Muay Thai anymore. He's at Sanford MMA training full-time, doing his camps over there. So there's really no connection anymore except for that little bit of pass that they have.
Yeah, exactly. And as a result, we get a really awesome matchup because, let's say they did train together. We wouldn't even be getting this fight, right? So it's that's a good thing. Let me just show you guys what we're looking at here on the screen. Go to the allstar.io for all your MMA news and stats and everything else. I love the way they do this. This makes our job so much easier here. So this is the co-main event. I mentioned it's on UFC Vegas 44, which is the Rob Font and Jose Aldo card, which, like I said, coming up here on December 4th. You look at the odds right now, it's about a pick 'em. And I don't disagree with that. We'll give our picks here obviously later on, but you can see here some lines having Fiziev as a slight favorite, Riddell as even money on some books. So it's pretty even odds right now. So that's why we're doing the show, to give you guys sort of an early look as well. As far as the tail of the tape goes, Fiziev, 28 years old, 30 years old for Brad Riddell. They both have 11 fights. They both have 10 wins. They both have 1 loss. They both have 6 wins. Fiziev has 6 wins by knockout. Brad Riddell, 5 knockout wins, 1 submission win for Fiziev. Finish rate of 70% for Fiziev, 50% finish rate for Brad Riddell. 5'8" to 5'7", 71.5 to 71.3. This is about, I love this. This is like a pretty even fight, right? If you're looking at, sort of the tail of the tape and what they have, as far as the notes here, 2-year age gap, like we mentioned there, no reach advantage, same number of pro fights. And let's look at the last couple fights. We'll start first with Fiziev. Like John mentioned, training at Sanford MMA. That was a result of the pandemic. I think a lot of fighters weren't able to train at Tiger Muay Thai because of the restrictions. So not a bad place to train if you're not over there. You see the 4-fight win streak there. Bobby Green via decision. That was a fight where he won, but that third round was kind of like, okay, like you got to fight all 3 rounds, man. You can't be leaving it to chance there. So Bobby Green did quite well in that third round. So that is one thing we point out is that, leading into that third round, I'm like, man, this guy deserves a big step up. And then that third round happened. It's kind of like, okay, well, maybe he needs a little bit more seasoning. The Moicano win was huge too. I mean, Moicano has been finished before, but the fact that he was finished that early, that was really impressive. You look at some of the guys that Moicano's fought and the fact that Fiziev was able to do it so quickly. Got a win over Diakaze, which isn't saying much these days, just what happened to Diakaze on the weekend. And Alex White's not in the UFC either. So 2 of those wins, not really great, but the last two are really good, especially with Green, with what we saw with Green did Ally Quinta back at the UFC New York card, UFC 268 a little while ago. And he does have a loss. Mustafayev getting the KO TKO win in a fight that was really just both guys were throwing the kitchen sink at each other. He just happened to be the guy who got caught. It reminds me a bit of the, I was bringing this up as an example, the Ryan Spann and Johnny Walker fight. Like that's a fight that nine times out of 10 they fight, you could get a different result because both guys were throwing hammers. So Mustafayev ends up getting the win there, but overall Fiziev's been pretty good. You mentioned the 70% finish rate. This guy's looked awesome, but this is a good test for him to sort of make his way up into a very deep division at 155. So JHK, just your thoughts on Fiziev and what he brings to the table.
Fiziev? How do you even say it, man? Like I've asked
So just before we hopped on here, because I know everyone's like, why are you calling him Fiziev? I just watched Bobby Green and Fiziev before we hopped on here. Anik says Fiziev. So if Anik says it, I'm going with Anik.
Okay, because when I talk to Rafael and I call him Fiziev, he's just like, it's all good. Like, I don't know what to say. I guess.
All right, I'll go with the Anik saying and you go with Fiziev. Either way, I called him Fiziev in my interview as well, and he didn't say anything. So I don't know. Maybe he likes both. Maybe he's one of those guys. Maybe he's like Prince and he has a symbol and he has a regular name too. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not sure.
Well, we're going to call him Fizzy from now on, right? You know,
sure,
like
Fizzy.
So we call him Fizzy. Now, I remember when he hopped on my radar, it was like 2017. If you look at his record, he was fighting at Primal FC, which was like a one-off promotion on Phuket Island. And he went in there and just knocked this dude out in the first round. And then after that, he went into Road. And I think Road really allowed Fiziev to come out and show his skill set because he had some crazy video game finishes there. And after that, you know, eventually he got signed by the UFC. His debut in 2019, right, against Magomed Mustafayev, I think a lot of people were shocked because they expected Rafael Fiziev to do that to Mustafayev and not the vice versa, right? So that was a surprise. I was actually watching that fight live with his teammates. Imagine that. His teammates were not so happy with that result. But anyways, Alex White, that was a good win, but I feel like the Mark DeCasey fight was the breakout fight for him. That really got people's eyes on Fiziev and his style and his abilities, right? He kind of got comfortable after his third fight, and what a great fight it was against DeCasey, because DeCasey is a tough SOB. And the Moicano fight right after that was a video game combination, right? A video game combination, probably a bonus. I think he's won bonuses in like his last 3 fights. So whenever you're winning bonuses, that means you're doing great in the octagon. And the Bobby Green win is looking really nice on his resume right now. And what I heard was that when he took that Bobby Green fight, he took it on real short notice and he wasn't able to get his weight down as properly and as quickly as possible. And that affected his weight cut and that affected his cardio. And that's why in the third round, you saw him like he did, he was. But I heard that this time around, they've had months and months to prepare. He shred those pounds. He's fine. He's ready to go. But the matchup is crazy. And Fiziev, he's a video game. Like, that's all you can say, really. He's a character in the video game. And he looks just like the main character from Viking. Have you ever watched Viking?
I haven't, but I've heard that comparison before. So There you go. And if people were wondering why I was looking at my phone, I just put in my picks for this weekend. So we're all up to date there. Okay. Anyways, let's get to Brad Quake Riddell. By the way, have you ever played Quake the game like back in the day on MS-DOS? I'm dating myself here, but that's the first thing that comes to mind when I see that nickname. Great game, by the way. If you haven't played it, shout out to anyone who's grown up in the 90s. Brad Riddell, there we go, 30 years old, trains in New Zealand with City Kickboxing, actually. So great camp over there. Dan Hooker, Israel Adesanya, the list goes on here. Looks a little bit like Lando Venata with hair, I think. Anyways, we've got, he's on a nice winning streak here. That last fight, though, that was the big one that I think woke people up, was a Drew Dober win. Drew Dober's a solid fighter, teammate of Justin Gaethje's, and for him to go out there and beat Dober the way he did, outstanding performance. Also has a win over Mustafayev, the guy that Fiziev lost to. Has a win over Alex De Silva. Alex De Silva's okay. Malarkey's a good win, too. Malarkey's a guy that, just came off a nice win himself. And Mikey Ventura, never heard of him, but either way, Brad Riddell has done quite well with this winning streak. And, you see it there, 50% finishing rate. And just I think the Dober win really was the one that kind of woke people up and said, okay, this is a guy we got to really start paying attention to. Because you know what? Here's the thing with a lot of the fighters at City Kickboxing, they get that rub because they fight there, right? So people automatically think they're good, but we've seen guys from that camp falter and not do so great. And I think that, Riddell's a guy that has sort of proven those critics wrong of being like, okay, well, it's not this that I'm from this gym. I'm actually pretty good. And he showed that in the Dober fight. Like I said, I thought he looked great in that one. 7-fight win streak. Really, really brings a lot to the table here. And obviously outstanding striking. I mean, I doubt this fight goes to the mat, but just your thoughts on Riddell and his 7-fight win streak.
Yeah, Riddell, when you look at his 7-fight win streak, you just look at his overall resume. He only has 11 pro fights. And you could say the same for Fiziev. But these guys have a lot of Muay Thai fights and a massive amount of kickboxing fights. So I feel like experience is not a factor, and nobody has the advantage over the other one, I believe, even though one has more UFC experience than the other. Brad Riddell, what can you say? He goes in there and he's the definition of Julian. What was his name from the Ultimate Fighter? Julian. Now he's a bare knuckle guy.
Julian Lane. Yeah,
he's the ultimate definition of let me bang, bro. That is Brad Riddell. If you watch any of his fights, that's what he's doing. He has phenomenal striking, but somehow, some way, he gets into these brawls, and we get to witness it and enjoy his masterpieces of what he's doing. And that's all I see really so far from Brad Riddell in the UFC is him going in there and he just bangs and he wins. And that's a great combination for any fighter coming up, and it serves him well, and the fans love it.
Do we know where Brad's doing his camp this time around? That's one thing I didn't have a chance. I don't even know how to get a hold of him. I know you've interviewed him before. Do you have any insight into that? Because I know a lot of those New Zealand guys, right, have been training stateside in the U.S. So
no, he's in New Zealand. He's not stateside. I believe he's in New Zealand doing his camp.
Okay. So you do wonder if that's going to compromise him in this fight because, Fiziev doesn't have to worry about that. In Florida, they're the opposite. They don't care about anything. So they're just like, whatever, you can train how you want. But, you remember Dan Hooker being like, look, like I got to stay in the U.S. to train because there's just, I don't want to worry about getting, busted or whatever from the police. So that's something we got to point out. I mean, is that going to impact him if you've got to worry about training and you got people knocking at the door telling you not to train together, right? So I don't know if that's going to be a factor, but I think that is something we do have to mention in this.
Yes, of course. Well. But I've seen just to sorry for cutting you, but
you don't have to apologize. Interrupt me as much as you want.
But I've seen them training though. Like I've seen videos of them training outside, doing strength and conditioning. I've seen them training in people's backyards. I don't know if it's their backyards, but they are training, so they are in camp. Him and Kai Kara France is going to fight. I feel like a week or two after him. So.
For sure.
He's in camp. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Sorry to clarify. Like, I know that they're training. I'm just saying that like having to worry about the threat of something to come on to shut it down, or maybe you let's say you had like a really important training session planned one day and then the police come and, you have to, disband. That's going to interrupt your training. That's a factor, right? So that's all I'm pointing out is that can't be ideal. Whereas a guy like Fiziev doesn't even have to worry about that, right? Because he's over there. So at Sanford. So that's just something I thought I'd bring up as far as something to fit. And the other thing is this fight's in Vegas. I know Florida's on the East Coast, but still, it's a not terrible flight for Brad Riddell. He's got a long way to travel for this fight too. So that's another factor in this fight where I feel like Fiziev has something that's a bit of an edge there. Okay, let's get into our picks here. I would have said after round 2, if this was fight was made, I would say Fiziev all day, right? Like no doubt about it, but. He does get hit a lot, John, and that is something that's a bit concerning. And not that Riddell's finishing a lot of his opponents. In fact, his last fights here that we just mentioned, they are going the distance. But it is an area of concern for me in that, if Fiziev gets a little reckless, is he going to get caught and have a repeat of the Mustafayev fight? I don't think that'll happen in this fight, but it is something that makes me not feel as confident. I think the odds are sort of reflecting that, right? Where you have more of a pick-em fight here. The thing for me that I kind of look at is that I think, Fiziev's got a little bit more experience. I think he's at a really good camp as well at Sanford. Like he's getting pushed every day. He's not having to worry about those factors that I just mentioned. I think Fiziev edges this one out slightly, but this is, again, a 50-50 fight. I think that, and this might sound a bit crazy here, I think the play here, if you're looking to bet this fight, is the fight goes the distance. I know that sounds nuts because these two guys are going to try and take each other's heads off, but it's 3 rounds. You look at Riddell, all of his fights have gone the distance. Fiziev's last fight went the decision. It's not like he's fighting a guy who's very chinny. Like Moicano's been knocked out before. He took Mark Diakiese and Alex White to a decision, 2 guys that have been finished before. We saw Diakiese get finished last weekend. I think that's the play here. I think this fight goes the distance potentially in one of those all-out, wars, maybe like a downgraded version of Chandler and Gaethje, but still a very good fight. I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. I just mean that these aren't neither of these guys are at the level of Gaethje and Chandler, but still have some great striking here. So I'm going to go Fiziev by decision, but this is a 50-50 fight, which is why I think if you're going to bet this and you want to find an edge here, take the fight goes the distance. Your thoughts on my crazy idea of that prop, and who are you picking?
When you look at this fight, and you look at the striking, pure striking, City Kickboxing, known for their striking, known for the kickboxing. Brad Riddell is a perfect example of that, right? And then you look at Rafael Fiziev, another kickboxer. But when you look at their styles and how they implement it with their kickboxing, Rafael Fiziev uses more weapons, right? And he's just more dynamic with his striking and his combinations. I don't know if they're better, but I feel like they're more diverse than Brad Riddell. Brad Riddell might be a little bit more effective with his striking, but he still gets into the brawls too. He gets clipped a lot, right? He was dropped in the Drew Dober fight. I believe he was dropped in the Malarkey fight, maybe even in the Mustafa fight. I think he's been in some big wars. Whereas when you look at Fiziev, yeah, he was finished in his first fight, but the last 4 fights, his 4-fight winning streak, they weren't really wars. They were kind of one-sided in many ways in his favor, except for that third round against Bobby Green, right? If you take that away, and I told you guys earlier that, the weight cut, things affected his cardio. I feel like that's not going to be a factor when he gets into this fight. He's going to have his cardio. He's going to have the same arsenal. These guys know what each other like to do because they train together, they spar together, they wrestle together, they've grappled together, they've done everything together, right? So with all that said, man, I think, I'm going to go with Fiziev in this fight. I feel like Fiziev is going to come in. He's going to do what he does, man. It doesn't care who's standing in front of him. Conor McGregor could be standing in front of him. He's going to do the same exact thing, which is throw the kitchen sink at you with crazy video game combinations. And I feel like if Riddell can't weather that storm, then he's going to be done in 2 rounds. I think he's going to finish him.
There we go. So we're both going with Fiziev in this fight. Again, fight's coming up here on December 4th, so really looking forward to that one, and should be interesting. I have not had any luck getting an interview with Fiziev ahead of this fight, but I'm going to keep trying. I don't know if he's just not doing media or what the deal is, but sort of looking into it. And Riddell I've never been able to get, so maybe you'll get him, and then you can check out
I'm trying, man. I haven't gotten him either, man, and I'm pulling all the cards I can. You know how it works.
It's been I don't know how it's been for you. I know you've been pumping out a lot of interviews. Sorry, and we'll get to the questions in a second. But man, I've had some tough luck over the last couple of weeks just getting like a bigger name. It's just been, how it is with management and, people getting back to you. Like I've been working with Jimmy Crute's manager, for example, for like the last couple of weeks trying to get something booked, and I don't think it's going to happen. So it's been a struggle, man. But we're doing our best here. So appreciate everyone who tunes in and watches all of our content. Again, just want to remind everyone, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. It's an easy way to support this channel and the video. And make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. I just put my picks in. So we'll do our underdog pick towards the end for UFC Vegas 43 as well. But let's get to the questions, everyone. Euro, what is good with you, my man? How are you? How does Max do at 155 in your eyes? He's top 5. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Again, I know it's, Yair is maybe not, actually, Yair's stock went up the last weekend. I thought he looked quite good, but I think even at 55, I know people say, oh, well, Dustin beat Max. Well, that was also a short notice fight. And, again, like moving up to 55, maybe Max puts on some size. I don't know. There could be a lot of factors here, but what we've seen Max do, he's dominated. You look at what he did to Cater. Like he's pretty much dominated most guys in that weight class other than Volkanovski. So I think he would do fine at lightweight. What do you think?
I don't know if he's top 5, though, to be honest with you, because if you look at the top 5, you got Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Benil Dariush, Makaev, and Chandler. Does Max beat those guys? I don't think so. Not at
I think on any given night, any of those guys could beat each other. You never know. I don't know.
I don't put Max up like that high, to be honest with you, in the lightweight division. Featherweight division, he's one of the greatest of all time, but lightweight is a different story, man. I think he would be a top 10 fighter, but I don't know top 5. I just don't think that he has it. Like these guys hit much harder than the featherweights.
They do, but two things work in his favor. Number one, he's got a granite chin. No one can seem to knock this guy out, including Conor McGregor. Number two is his boxing's got to be up there as some of the best in MMA right now. And that's something that you look at Calvin Kattar, that was supposed to be a thing. It was, Kattar was going to outstrike him, and he didn't. Max did. Max was the hammer. He was the nail. So we'll see. Maybe I'm overrating him a bit just because of some fight this weekend, but I think Max is right up there. Maybe top 10's more likely. Maybe I jumped the gun a little bit. I can admit when I'm wrong. Will a win for either Fiziev or Riddell boost them up to top 10, surpassing Gregor Gillespie or even Conor McGregor? Probably not, unfortunately, just because of who they're like. Neither, like we said, like this, neither of these fighters are like household names, so to speak. Like if it was, for example, if it was, well, obviously if they fought McGregor, completely different story. But you know what I'm saying? Like if they fought someone that had somewhat of it, like for example, if Fizzy fought Donald Cowboy Cerrone, believe it or not, that would probably hold more weight than a win over Riddell. That's how just weird the fandom works. So I think that I think they'll kind of be in the same spot. But hopefully, I want to see Gillespie matched up with one of these guys. Gillespie's that one sort of guy out there for whatever reason isn't getting booked regularly, and I don't know why. So, not sure. Surpassing Ferreira and Connor makes sense, not Gillespie. There we go. Can Fiziev Riddell beat Font Aldo or Barberena Brown for fight of the night? Absolutely, I think they can. Yeah.
I think so.
I don't know how Barberena and Brown's going to play out because, Brown's getting to that point where, and even Barberena as well. Barberena's coming off a loss to Jason Witt. How are they going to look? Like, if this fight was made a couple of years ago, maybe, but I don't know if we're going to get that fight of the night type thing from either of these guys because we could see a finish, right? So that could happen. Font Aldo, I think will be very technical. I don't know if it'll be like a really like super exciting, like it'll be a good fight, but it won't be one of those like memorable, like, Dan Hooker Poirier fights type thing. It's going to be more technical, I think. I think it's going to play out more like Sandhagen and Jan, to be honest, like a really technical battle there. That's
I think it's gonna go 5 rounds. I think Font's enough, tough enough, skilled enough to stay around for 5 rounds with Aldo. So I think you're right. It's not gonna be a brawl. It's gonna be very technical. These guys are gonna be using all the arsenal that they have on the feet. It's gonna be fun. Fiziev Riddell, I think that that fight is or can be just as exciting as the fight that we just saw last week between Gaethje and Chandler. Man, I don't know why people try to think it won't be. And Barberena Brown, that's going to be just violence, don't you think? It doesn't matter if those guys are not as skilled as they were before.
Well, I just mean we might see a finish in that fight is kind of what I'm getting at. So I don't know if that would translate into like an all-out war. Like I was just telling you guys, I think that Fiziev and Riddell could potentially go the distance, which would kind of favor more of a fight of the night. Like what if Brown gets knocked out in the first round or vice versa? What if Barberena gets knocked out early? Like that's not really fight of the night. That's more of like a nice knockout. Do you see what I'm getting at? Like that's I think there's more likely a finish there. Whereas this one, I think this could be more of like a
You're right. So. Now that I look at those matchups, it is like Fiziev Riddell, most likely it'll be a decision. And Font Aldo probably will be a decision too.
Any idea why Fiziev decided to not represent Kyrgyzstan anymore? No idea. It would help if I get an interview with him.
I know, but I'm not saying anything about it because it's not my place.
Okay, well there you go.
And plus, I don't know the whole story, so I can't just blab out stuff that I know and then not know exactly what I'm talking about.
Euro, Thiago Santos and Ankalaev. Who do you guys got in this one? Okay, so I saw this announced yesterday, and my immediate thought is, why are they doing this fight? Because like I feel like I guess it makes sense because they need Santos to fight someone, but it's like Santos is on the downward swing. Ankalaev's going the other way. I almost feel like him beating Volkan is almost the same now as beating Thiago Santos. So I don't really get it. In fact, I did a poll question on my channel today saying I didn't even say who's going to win because I think most people will pick Ankalaev in that fight. You have to, just based after how these two have sort of performed in their last couple fights. I said, don't you think there's a better opponent for him? So I gave Rakic and Jan Blachowicz and Anthony Smith as some other names. I only put Smith ahead just because he won his last fight. So yeah, I think I like Ankalaev all day in that fight. I think Santos really needs to dig deep and get back to that old form, but I don't know if that Santos exists from the knee surgery, from him getting a bit older. I don't think that the Santos that knocked out Jan Blachowicz, I don't know if that Santos exists anymore. Whereas Ankalaev has been steady.
This matchup makes sense. You know why? Santos is number 5. Ankalaev is number 6. Ankalaev is coming off a win streak. Santos just won a fight after a couple losses. This makes sense to me. Why would you not put this fight together? They're kind of like hitting at this, like you said, one's going up, one's coming down. So it's just like they got to meet somewhere. And it's perfect timing for Ankalaev to break out with this fight.
Yes, I kind of forgot that he beat Walker because that fight was so close. I remember I almost felt like Walker almost won that too. It was just, I just think Santos, mind you saying that, I guess Ankalaev didn't really light the world on fire in his last fight either. So exactly. maybe that does make sense. But I don't know. I think Ankalaev wins that all day. I just think you have a tale of two fighters going in opposite directions. Maybe Santos has something left and he'll show that in this fight, but I like Ankalaev all day in that one. JEFM, both are 5'7", both are 10-1, both are Muay Thai strikers, both trained at TMT and evenly matched as you can get, like we mentioned. Considering recent card lineups, what are the odds this fight ends on the prelims? Which fight? This Fiziev and Riddell ends up on the isn't it on the prelim? Oh no, this is the co-main event, is it not?
Yeah, it's co-main, I believe.
Yeah, so there we go. Any update on whether City Kickboxing are moving? Yeah, don't know, unfortunately. I don't know if they're moving their entire camp. There was talks of that, but I know Adesanya, I follow his YouTube channel. He's still at home, so I don't think they're
Yeah,
they've moved.
from what I heard from people that I know that are connected to them is that that's just talk. It's
Yeah.
nothing serious. I don't feel like they're gonna. From what I heard is like they're not gonna make a decision until the new year.
Mm.
When because I don't isn't Izzy scheduled to fight at the end of February?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I feel like they're gonna make that decision like pretty soon, like at the end of December, and then be flying somewhere in the beginning of January for camp for Izzy and his teammates because I think they're fighting on there too. So this is what I heard.
Okay. Well, there you go. Who's your favorite fighter to watch? Piotr Jan, Wear You Down style is mine. I like Gegard Mousasi. Everyone knows this. I just like his demeanor. He's a guy that is just so unassuming, and he still gets it done, and he's still one of the best middleweights in the world. So, yeah, I'm going Gegard for me. What about you?
I don't know, man. Like I don't. Yeah, Peter Yan is one of my favorite guys to watch, of course. And before
Yeah.
that, TJ Dillashaw was one of my favorite guys to watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That style is always going to be the most attractive to me. That heavy movement, lots of just combinations and moving forward and pretty much being able to handle like heavy shots and still move forward. Who hates that style, man? I love it.
If the UFC decides to do a title fight for Tough, who can you see doing the show? Oh, you mean for 45? They should do that. That would probably help the featherweight division. Just get all the featherweights in a house and see what happens. I'd be like, do you remember they did the comeback season that one year? I actually liked that. I thought that was cool because you're already familiar with the fighters going in. Like, how hard it is to get new fans or to get even, people like us interested in new fighters because it's always the same thing, like hard upbringing. I quit my job to do this show. Like we've seen that time and time again. Whereas if you have like, I want to know, like, for example, like, let's say a fighter got cut recently. I know it's not the right weight class, but like Conor Worthy just got cut. I'd love to see him on Tough and get a redemption, potentially getting to go back there and do it. So, you want to do the featherweight division, throw Kayla Harrison in there if they can get her signed. Although that's looking less likely or not. But can you imagine like a Tough house with like Kayla Harrison, Felicia Spencer, Aspen Ladd, Leah Letson, like just do like a tournament and put them in there. I'd be totally down with that. So yeah, as far as who do I see doing the show? I mean, I don't know if the fighters would be into that if you're already in the UFC, but if there's a title shot on the line, maybe it's worth it. So there's my idea. That's what you got to do.
I think
what they're
right.
doing they're doing women's featherweight and flyweight, right? Men's flyweight?
Yeah. No, women's flyweight.
Oh, they're doing women's flyweight. Okay.
Yeah, women's flyweight and men's middleweight or light heavyweight. Something.
Oh, they are? Okay, I totally got the weight classes wrong. I heard I heard like flyweight and I just thought men's.
James, you're making the most sense because yes, they do need flyweight fighters, but they do have like prospects coming up in the division and building themselves up. So Tough, not right now. You could do it in a year from now, right? They need featherweight. They need Kayla Harrison to be in the house so she could talk shit to everybody and get people mad. I think Kayla would play the heel really well, and I think she's waiting until she gets to the UFC to start doing that because you see it a little bit in the PFL, a little bit.
Yeah, I think the way things are looking, though, like I was told, like I said a little while ago, that it was almost inevitable that Kayla was going to the UFC. Now with what's going on in the media, and she was at Bellator the other night. Granted, they had an event in Florida, so why not boost her stock a little bit? But come to think of it as well, like if Kayla really feels like she can beat Chris Cyborg, your profile will be even bigger. And then then the UFC is going to be begging for you. It sounds like right now they're not doing that, but you want to get to that point that Chandler and Alvarez were at, where it's like, okay, we definitely want you, and we're going to pull out all the stops to make it happen. And look at Chandler, one fight in the UFC gets a title shot. I mean, granted, featherweight that would have happened anyway, just because there's no one in the division. But still, maybe Kayla goes that route because I think Kayla does beat a lot of the fighters in Bellator. Does she beat a Cyborg? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, she was at Bellator. She signs with Bellator, beats a couple of the featherweights, gives a title shot, smashes Cyborg. Then the UFC has to pay her serious money. I think that's the perfect route, man. I think you probably just showed the future of Kelly Harrison right here on the show. We have to, earmark that.
We'll move on, but last thing I'll say on Tough, they got to do Masvidal and Colby as the coaches. That's a no-brainer. If they pay them whatever they want to get paid, give them whatever they need. But those are the two coaches that it should be. I don't want, like, we got lucky this year with Volkanovski and Ortega not liking each other, and that actually added something to it. But you know how hard it is to replicate that? These two guys definitely don't like each other. That's what they got to do for the coaches, is Colby and Masvidal. Thoughts on this, guys? Top 15 lightweights, new names has Riddell, Fiziev, Arman, now Alvarez, and soon Gamrot. Sure, I'm fine with that. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anyone else that we're missing there. With a full camp, I still think he won't finish Green. His manager is putting out a false narrative there to justify why Fiziev didn't finish. The fight is just hilariously to me. The pick is Riddell. So you're picking Riddell because he didn't look good in the third round. I don't know. Like, I think unless you're picking Riddell for a different reason, but look, managers are supposed to do that. They're supposed to come out and have their fighters back. So maybe that was true, maybe it wasn't. But yeah, I mean, I think that. I mean, Bobby Green's better than anyone that Riddell's fought, in my opinion. Even Drew Dober. I think Bobby Green would beat Drew Dober.
Oh, me too. I think so too. Bobby Green is becoming a legit threat to a lot of these top lightweights, man. People better watch out for Bobby Green.
Euro was pointing out that Fiziev stock was supposed to grow after the Bobby Green fight. It didn't. Well, that's why this fight's getting made. Do you think Russell's wrestling can be a game changer in this fight? Russell. Who's Russell?
Riddell?
Russell. You mean Riddell? Yeah, we'll say. Well, I'm assuming you're meaning Riddell.
Russell Simmons? I don't know.
Oh no, yeah, he says Riddell. There we go. He corrected himself.
Okay.
Could it be a factor? Do you think?
But have you seen Fiziev wrestle? The boy can wrestle. I'm not joking.
And also look who he's training with.
Yeah.
Yair gained a new fan for me. We got to see him versus Jigga. Well, Jigga's got to fight Cater, but Yair, yeah, I mean, I think Yair's, and he showed that his ranking was warranted. That was the big thing sort of heading in to the fight was, why are they doing this fight? Well, I mean, we have to see. And Yair, didn't look like the guy who got absolutely destroyed by Frank Yeager a couple of years ago. He's definitely made some strides. So yeah, I agree there. I think Yair's stock has gone up, and with a few adjustments, maybe he can get to that title shot. We'll see. I'd love to see Holloway versus Gillespie. Yes, Holloway is better striker and bigger name, but the wrestling game and cardio of Gillespie is crazy. It would be a fun fight, but you're right. It's not going to happen because there's no incentive for Holloway to take that fight.
No.
Do you think that Yair and Volk fights slowed down, that low kicks can slow Max down? Yeah, I think there's something into that a little bit. But again, you're talking about Max Holloway. Like, that's just one little thing with him. There's so many other things that he's good at that you can't beat him at, right? So,
you know what sucks about Max, and it's going to eventually happen, is his body's going to wear down from all the punishment.
100%. Yeah.
And it's just going to happen in an instant. We're going to see it in a fight in the next couple, I believe, that where the same Max is not there. You know what I mean? Just being able to take damage, you know what I mean? Because that's what he's known for, right? Iron chin, like he gets kicked in the leg 15, 20 times in a fight. It doesn't really bother him. But eventually those things change, man. Your ankles, your knees, something's going to give. And I think that's going to happen soon.
Again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you want to get your questions answered, you got to hit the subscribe button. That's how it works around here. Kevin, what's up, Kevin? One of my Patreons. He says, I'm most looking forward to Crute versus Hill on this card. Both had terrible injuries in their last fights. Who wins that one? That's a tough one because I'm high on both of these guys. I think the Crute fight with Anthony Smith was unfortunate because we didn't really get to see what he's made of. And I think Crute had the potential to beat Anthony Smith. I don't know, though. I've been on Jamal Hill for a while. He did lose his last fight because the crazy thing was, like, his arm gets dislocated. He doesn't even notice. He's just like, whoa, like that's some serious toughness. I think the power of Hill might be the difference, but we'll see. We'll see, because Crute can hit like a truck as well. We saw him, Modestas Bukauskas, be the recipient of that. I don't know. I'm going to go Jamal Hill. I'm a little higher on him, just a little bit, but I could see Crute winning.
Yeah, Jamal Hill is a beast, and
scary,
I can see
man.
Speed. Yeah, I could see, and he's tall, long for the division. I could see his speed being a problem for Crute, but Crute does have a decent chin, and he does like bulldoze into guys, right, which will cause problems for Hill. I'm gonna go with Crute. I'm gonna go with the opposite. I'm gonna go with Crute. He's gonna bulldoze.
We got something to disagree on finally.
His face in his chest, and maybe take him down a couple times and see what he can do off his back. Yeah, I think Crute will be able to, maybe even wrestle himself through a decision win over Hill.
I agree with you in that Fiziev and Cowboy Riddell analogy, James. Sometimes people hold more weight with a win over a washed-up former champion than a hungry guy in his prime. Well, Cowboy was never champion, but we're on the same wavelength there. Look at McGregor; he beats Cowboy, and then he gets to fight for a title, right? Or he had the fight with Poirier. So it just goes to show that, like, yeah, you can win one fight, and that means a lot of things. So there you go. Do you think the winners of Bilal Wonderboy and Kiasa Brady will fight each other? That's a good question. Depends who wins, I think. If Wonderboy beats Bilal and Brady beats Kiasa, maybe that could happen. If Bilal beats Wonderboy and Kiasa beats Brady, yeah, I guess so. I think that makes sense, right? Because they're kind of ranked around the same area.
I think if Wonderboy beats Bilal, I think Wonderboy doesn't fight the winner of Kiasa and Brady. I feel like Wonderboy will fight one of the top contenders. I still think that the UFC wants to push Wonderboy a little bit. You know what I mean?
Last fight on his
gets a
contract.
fight.
That's interesting though, right? This fight, the last fight. So we'll see if
Combat
they even want to keep him
karate
around.
combat, dude. I think he'll be perfect for that promotion.
Or
but,
Glory.
yeah.
I know he's talked about doing kickboxing as well. So we'll see. We'll see what he wants to do. Thoughts on Moises loss? The Islam loss changed him? No, the Islam loss didn't change him. He got caught. He fought a guy who's got devastating striking. I was surprised by that too, because we've never seen Moises finish that early. That was the one fight on the card. I was like, how the hell did that happen?
Did you see how big that guy was?
I know, and he missed weight too. So that's that could be a factor as well in terms of.
I think that's just a couple times he's missed weight now.
Yeah, so he's got to get that under control. But yeah, my thought, I think you just chalk it up to Alvarez was the better fighter that night. But I'm not writing off Thiago Moises. This was a guy that early in his UFC career struggled. Remember, he had the loss to Dariush, and a lot of people were writing him off then. And then he went on a nice winning streak. So I think there's still plenty of room for improvement with Moises. I don't think he's 26. He's to say that he's done. Not saying you said that, but I've seen some people mention that. I don't think that's accurate. So
20. That's crazy how some people could say a guy's 26 and he's done. That's insane.
You guys have done many of these notable breakdowns, but not for the main event this coming weekend. Well, two reasons for that. Number one, they switched the fight, right? It was supposed to be a few weeks ago, and then they switched it to later. And two, let's be honest here, this is not one of their better main events. I mean, I know Tate's a former champion, but this is not the type of fight that I think is people really care too much about. Like, I can tell you just from my own perspective, I do a breakdown show every Monday. I do a preview show podcast, one of my lowest rated ones this year, because people just aren't into this event. And I get it. This is what's going to happen when you stack certain cards. The result is some of these cards are a little bit weaker, and this is what we're left with. So that's why we didn't do it. We're open to suggestion when it comes to breaking down fights, but for the most part, how we sort of do it is we kind of just look at like main events, notable names like a Chimaev or someone like that, and we sort of go from there. That's basically how we figure it out. There's no real science behind it. It's just more of like, hey, this is what we think would be a fun fight to break down. So there we go.
And you know what's crazy about this weekend too is that the main event could be for a title shot.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Like not a lot of people are talking about that.
Well,
but
the fact that Penny even got her title shot is crazy, right?
Yeah,
she lost to Jermaine Durand 2 fights ago decisively. And now she's getting a title shot, and she gets the title shot beating someone in Sarah McMahon who's been submitted. We've seen this play out how many times with Sarah McMahon? She wrestles for a bit, and then she gets to the ground and she gets submitted. Martin Renault did it. Ketlin Vieira did it. Pena did it. I mean, it's not rocket science. So it's like, I don't even count that win as very good. Credit to Pena, though. She talked her way into the title shot. Certainly makes it interesting as a tough winner, but it just goes to show this division is in desperate need of contenders. And you thought maybe Aspen Ladd would do that, but she misses weight. Like, there's just so much going on right now. So there we go. Considering Ankalaev, Santos got booked, Smith Yan was in talks. Does that mean Rakic is the odd man out? I, again, reached out to Rakic's manager, did get a hold of him. We're trying to work on something here because I want an update. This guy has been radio silent since his win over Santos. I think he did maybe 1 or 2 interviews since then, but what's going on? To me, it looks like Yuri's going to fight Glover. I would think that's the fight if he wants to. And I even think that's one you wait around for just because, I mean, it's a title shot, right? Like, I know it'd be a year, but still, you got to do that. Rakic, though, to me, Rakic and Ankalaev was the fight to make. That's the fight you do because it's 2 guys who had underwhelming wins but are still ranked high. That to me would make the most sense. But now with Rakic out, like, I don't want to see the Smith rematch. Like, I think he beats Smith again. Maybe you do Rakic.
You get Blachowicz.
I was going to say Rakic and Blachowicz is the fight to make. That's the one to do. When to expect a Cater versus Jigga breakdown? Maybe we'll do that next week. I don't know. We've I got to look at 269 again and see what other interesting fights, but that's way out. I think that's January 15th. So we got lots of time. So I know this is sort of an early preview, but maybe not too early, but we'll see. We'll figure it out this week. If it's not Max, who do you think Volts fights next? And who do you think gives him the hardest fights outside of Max? Can I just say something here quickly before we answer this question? I am so sick and tired of the talk of Max Holloway and McGregor. That fight makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, other than if Holloway wants to get a payday. But if you're Conor McGregor and you're the UFC, there's not a chance in hell you make that fight because Conor would lose. I feel very confident in saying that. Max Holloway's been super active. He's looked great. He's in the prime of his career. And you're fighting a guy in McGregor who's coming off a pretty bad injury, who's lost 2 in a row. He needs a bounce back fight. Haven't we learned this from Ronda Rousey and so many other fighters that, like, you can't just keep giving fighters high level fights and expecting a miracle to happen? Like, I just don't think that's a fight that needs to be made. And not just that, we need to settle the score with Volkanovski and Holloway. I'm so sick and tired as well of hearing about people say Max is the uncrowned champ. He beat him in the second fight. Well, you got to prove it. Okay. I know the judges, sometimes they don't get it right, but that was a close fight. Usually when it's a close fight, you give it to the champ here. I think they got to close this chapter once and for all. And if Holloway wins, then yeah, maybe we figure out some new contenders for that title shot. But they got to close that chapter with Volkanovski and Holloway. And if it's not, then it's going to be Giga Chikadze if he beats Kattar. Absolutely, that's what's next, I think. So
No, I think he fights the Korean Zombie. Because if you
You
look at
think
the
so?
rankings, yeah, if Holloway doesn't fight Volkanovski, I think he fights.
That's true,
the
actually. And
Korean
Zombie has a bit of a bigger name too. That's a
Yeah,
good
he has a
point.
bigger
I didn't think
name.
of
They
it.
have history of kind of going back and forth a little bit. You know, why not? And he's off a win on in his last fight, so I can see it happening.
Did you see Nolan King's report a few weeks ago that the UFC had planned Tony versus Gillespie? I mean, then I didn't see that, but I mean,
Yeah.
to me, you got okay. Look, let's call it what it is here. And I like Tony Ferguson a lot. Tony Ferguson, not the same Tony Ferguson we've been used to seeing. To me, you got to get the most out of him. I guess if you really see something in Gillespie, you give him that push by giving him the Tony fight because Gillespie wins that all day, in my opinion. But to me, it's like if you're gonna go that route, give him someone else. Like I don't know. I just feel like that's kind of like a wasted matchup for Tony at this stage in his career. To me, it's like the obvious fight with Ferguson is a rematch with Cerrone. Because it's two vets, two guys who are past their prime. You get a fun fight out of it. It's something that at least the fans would be into. I just think if you're going to push Gillespie, that's not really I don't know. Like, I just don't think Gillespie's the guy you want to push. He's not a guy that's going to be like a superstar in the weight class. He's a great fighter. I'm not denying that. But I just think this idea of him, like, I don't know, just I just don't think it makes much sense here. If you're going to get rid of Tony, at least get something more out of it, like a Cerrone fight, as opposed to doing a Gillespie fight. It just doesn't do much for either guy, is what I'm kind of saying.
I think if Ferguson sits around long enough, he'll probably end up fighting the winner of Riddell Fiziev. I think
That's true too.
a possibility.
Yeah. Okay, what else do we got? Do you think Alvarez deserved to be ranked above missing weight back to back? That's a tough one because, yeah, you miss weight, but then he did get a win. I guess under the circumstances, I'm okay with it, but yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know.
I'm not okay with it because he's missed weight twice, and it's
but then where do you put him, right?
Yeah, you just leave him out because it's for
but then
does
Moises stay in there despite losing? Like, I don't know how you do that. Or do you
there's other guys that's
actually, you know what? I'll agree with you there. You bring up someone from that's not in the top 15, put them in there, and then take Moises out. I'm with you there. Okay, that's the correct answer. Guram is the dark horse at 155. Yeah, I would agree with that. He's very good.
He's very good, but he still needs a couple more wins. Come on, he's got to prove himself a little bit more. How many fights has he have in the UFC so far? 2?
Yeah.
I don't think he does. He has many, so yeah, he needs a little bit more. I know you guys are all hyped up on him, but he needs a little bit more.
How does Jung and Span match up? Ooh, like that fight. That's a great fight. Jung looked awesome.
Yeah,
what a win that was, huh? That was great.
Good.
That's a type of win. And it's kind of like Joel Alvarez minus the weight miss that like really gets people being like, okay, we got to pay attention to this guy because he needed a win like that. He's had a couple, decent wins, but a lot of them have been kind of underwhelming. This was one, and not that Kennedy is a guy that you're really like, oh my goodness, like huge win, but still, like the way he finished him, that was deadly, man. Like now I want to see this guy fight. I think Ryan Span's a great matchup because Span's a guy that's been up and down.
The only fight that was underwhelming for Jung was the Sam Alvey fight because they fought to a draw and it was kind of a weird fight, right? Because usually everybody beats Sam Alvey. But his other fights have been great, right? The first fight, his debut, he was losing the fight, came back and submitted the what was it? The Fight Night champ, right? The Fight Night champ, the guy from Russia, right? That was pretty hyped. Jung submitted him. Second fight, he knocked out your boy from Boston, Mike Rodriguez in the first round. And that was a highlight reel finish. And then he
went the distance with William Knight.
Yeah, he went and he controlled William Knight, neutralized him because you saw William Knight in his last fight. He just put the hammers on the dude, right? So Jung had a great game plan in that, and he come out here and beats Kennedy, which a lot of people were surprised that Kennedy didn't do anything in that fight, really, right? It's just like he was very underwhelming. Maybe he's a slow starter.
He's a slow starter. That's and I think they recognize that and they took care of him. Are you going to interview Jung anytime soon? He seems like an exciting guy.
He's not the most talkative guy in the world, but I've interviewed him a few times, and I actually interviewed him before this fight, but I don't know what happened to the video, man. I lost it in the ether.
Isn't that the worst? That's happened to me, or I've had a couple issues. I don't know if you've ever had this where an outlet didn't. First off, when it comes to outlets, I like outlets that let me post the interview, and if they want to post it whenever, that's fine. But let me upload it, so at least I know it's made it there. I have one outlet, not going to mention who they are. I've lost probably 5-6 interviews from them because I send them the interview, I forget about it, and then I come fight time, I'm like, hey, where's this interview? And the WeTransfer link, because that's how I send them the interview, gets lost. And then it's like, it's gone. And I got to tell the fighter, sorry, dude, like it got lost. So that's why now I have like a backup, because I like to clean up my hard drive every once in a while to make sure I'm, not cluttering it up. But anyways, that's a side
yeah,
note.
but I said Jung is the most promising fighter in Asia right now. I'm just going to put that out there.
No, I'd agree with that. What's next for Casey Kenny? Good question. Tough loss in his last one. Although with Song Yadong did this past weekend, that was a really good win over Julio Arce.
Yeah,
I thought for sure that fight was going the distance, and it didn't end up happening. I mean, he's got to win over Nathaniel Woods, so we know that he's top 15. It's just a question of who he can beat. I'm just looking at the rankings right now. Well, you shouldn't get a ranked guy. Who's unranked that like is making some noise? I'm just trying to think.
No, I think I like Casey Kenny a lot. I like his style, right? And he does, and his fights are really good. I think that they should give him Frankie Edgar. If Frankie Edgar is going to fight again, he's ranked 13. Why not just give Casey Kenny another shot at a ranked guy? They've been doing that, to him for a while. So give him another chance and see what he can do.
Sure, I'll be all right with that. What's your reaction? Already talked about that. I think Jiga's low kicks and body kicks and hands can give Holloway problems. We'll see. He's got to get past Cater first. That's a tough fight to do with Cater as well. So don't. I think a lot of people are going to write up.
Looking past Cater, man. Like Giga is what? Is he really like that guy? I don't.
He looked great in his last fight. I'll give him. It's a tale of two guys going in opposite directions because Cater got destroyed by Holloway, and then Giga just beat a really good guy in Edson Barbosa, and that I became a believer after that. I was kind of like, okay, this guy's great, but I mean, don't forget how good Calvin Cater is. Like, wins over Ige. Like, I feel like this is going to be a fight come closer to fight time. People are going to totally write off Cater. And who knows? The time off might be better. Tyson Chartier is one of the best coaches in the world. This guy game plans like you wouldn't believe. Look what he's done with Rob Font, with Cater. Chartier is a very underrated coach. Like, don't be surprised if we see a much better Cater in this fight. And don't be surprised if he even pulls it off. So we'll see. Early pick for 50K and Emmett. I like Emmett in that fight, actually. To me, it's the power. I think that's going to be the difference. I think we forget how good. Yeah, exactly. And I think, Ige's great. Ige's like your lunch pail, like works his ass off in the gym. Everyone likes him type guy, but Emmett's actually got like a little bit of like little extra. Like he's got that knockout power. He's got good wrestling, good camp as well. I know he's a bit older and the layoffs and injuries are concerning, but my early pick on that is Emmett. I think he gets it.
Yeah, even with all that, even with all the factors, yeah, Emmett just looks on paper just much more far ahead of Dan Ige.
Let's get to our underdog picks for this week. I have actually two that I'm looking. Well, I'm going to officially pick one, and then I'll tell you another one that I'm kind of looking at as well too, that I think could be interesting. Let me get off the screen here, or we'll stay on the screen, but we'll look at the odds here. Okay, so the first one that stands out to me, and maybe I'm completely out to lunch here, John. How is Joanne Calderwood a plus 260 underdog against Santos? I don't get that. And by the way, it's Joanne Wood. They got I think they have it here, but they didn't update the odds. But that's crazy. Like, I know Santos has looked good. She's on what, like a 3-fight win, or she's on like a decent win streak in the UFC. I want to say 3 fights. But Calderwood's fought really good fighters, and she's narrowly losing. Like that Murphy fight that she lost, the last one was split decision. That was a fight that you could have made the argument she won that. I just think, to me, it's a case of, yes, Santos is younger. Yes, Calderwood's 35. So it's like, what are you really getting out of her? But her stand-up's still really good. I think this is a case of where people are kind of overrating Santos's wins a little bit. And I think they're underrating Calderwood and how much he's in there. Because if you look, Calderwood loses 2 ways usually. This is it. Close decision or she gets submitted, right? We've seen this time and time again. Andrade, Moroz, Jennifer Maia all submit Joanne Calderwood in the very first round. Santos isn't a submission specialist. It's not going to happen here. So, because Calderwood has these fights every now and then where she'll have these lapses where she just gets finished early on. Santos isn't that type of fighter to do that to her. So if she can't get the early finish, I think Calderwood keeps the standing and gets the decision win here. I think she gets it done. So that's my underdog pick, is Joanne Calderwood. I picked her on my show this week, and I think she gets it done. Who do you like as an underdog, and what do you think of my pick?
I think, I love your pick, man. Your pick is great. And another pick, I feel like, as an underdog coming up big, there's 2 of them, I feel. Number 1, Davy Grant. Number 2, Loma Lukbumi. in her matchup against Lupi Godinez. She's the underdog. I don't understand like how she's the underdog, right? But she is. So I will take that money. I feel like Loma, much more technical. She can keep it on the feet, win a decision pretty easily. Davy Grant is the wild card, man. Adrian Yanez, he's the superstar on the rise. You know, he's flashy. He does everything right. But David Grant is just a gun. He's just a dog, right? Like he gets into those like can David Grant draw Adrian Yanez into that brawl? Because David Grant has that power to knock you out, or he has that power to stun you and submit you. And this is a huge test for Yanez. If he could get past David Grant, I see a big future for him. But this is a huge challenge. And if David Grant's the underdog at 235, I'd take David Grant, man. Even though I love Yanez, don't tell Yanez I picked David Grant though.
No, I won't. That was one I was looking at. That was one I mentioned because, you know, we're just a couple fights removed from him knocking out Jonathan Martinez, who kind of reminds me a bit of Yanez in terms of having a lot of power. And I think Yanez is the better striker between the two, but still. But I don't know. Like, I just think Yanez is tough to finish. I just think the line's off on this one. Like, I think Yanez should be like a 2-1, maybe -150 favorite, because Grant's an abs. Like, the only thing was with Grant is he hasn't fought that much. He's older. And so those are things that you kind of look at. But yeah, Yanez should win. I actually like Yanez by knockout in that fight. I think he could potentially knock out Grant, but that's one to look at. I'll mention one more, and I've seen other people kind of go the other way on this one. This Kiasa and Brady fight's interesting, with Kiasa being the underdog. I think Brady will probably win, but he also hasn't fought anyone to the level of Kiasa. And we're only, 2 fights removed from Kiasa absolutely dominating Neil Magny. Like, that was a good win in the weight class, because Magny's sort of that measuring stick of like, how good are you really in the weight class? I don't want to say gatekeeper, but he's one of those guys that, you know, you can sort of figure out from. So, and Kiasa's going to be bigger in this fight. And Brady's had a long layoff because he had the 2 fights with Kevin Lee that didn't end up happening. So that's one to keep an eye on. I am picking Brady, but I think if you're going to bet this, the value is on Kiasa for sure. So those were 2 ones that I was kind of looking at as well. Lupi, supposed to be talking to her today. I know she was in Mexico training with Alexa Grasso. The question is, can she make the weight? That was one of the things I was going to say, is see how the weight cut is for her. She never missed weight, but the fact that she's taking this on like a week's notice and she's got to make 115, it's not like 125. Loma could upset. So that's another one to keep in mind. But yeah, decent card here this weekend. So that's who we're going with. I already put my picks on the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app, so make sure you guys look at that. Okay, let's get a few more questions here, and then we'll dart out of here a little bit early as we usually do. My opinion, Gillespie RDA is the fight to make, both on a fight win streak and catapulted to the top 10. Sure. I'm with you there. RDA needs to fight. He's got to get back in there. He's just been off for a while, and he's had injuries and things like that. But come on. Tony should fight McGregor. Yes, he should. That is the fight to make. That's a fight that makes a lot of sense. Big name, winnable fight for McGregor. That's the fight to make. Tony and McGregor. If you want to go that route, that makes perfect sense to me.
No arguments for me there. But McGregor, I don't think he's going to fight next year. So Tony needs to fight somebody else.
True. We'll see what that goes. Ferguson and Kiasa at welterweight if Kiasa loses this weekend. Oh, no. That doesn't make any sense for Kiasa at all. I mean, I know Ferguson's a big name, but like Ferguson's on what, a 3-fight losing streak or something? He lost Oliveira. Oh yeah, actually, so he's lost all those guys. And Kiasa, I mean, again, he's just one. Depends how he loses. If Kiasa gets absolutely destroyed, which I don't think is going to happen, then maybe you entertain that. But I just think that Kiasa's actually got a decent standing in the weight class. Why would you fight a guy who's not ranked? Who's ranked in a weight class below her? I don't see the thinking there personally. But
yeah, I don't see that happening. I don't see Ferguson going up to 170, to be honest with you, at all.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know. And it's not like, I know Ferguson does cut a decent amount of weight, but he's not like a huge guy for the weight class. Yeah. So fun fact, Ismagulov has wins over both Moises and Alvarez because of his inactivity. He was never top 15. Well, there you go. That's exactly it. You got it. It's like people complaining about Islam not, being in the title shot now, or that he hasn't been moved up faster. You got to fight frequently, and a lot of these guys don't. So that's it hurts. Activity is a big way to get to where you need to get to, and we've seen it time and time again. Look at someone like Lupi. How many fights is this for this year? 3, 4? I think like that's, not that you need to go that extreme, but still a couple fights a year, 2, 3 fights a year, you're probably going to be moving up the rankings pretty fast, assuming you win, obviously. But
10th from where'd you find this fun fact? Because I think I just saw somebody tweet that on Twitter.
Are you saying he played?
I believe is Ismagulov's manager Syed. I think he tweeted something out about that. Maybe 10th round was before him, so I don't know. Let's talk about the next one.
Who would you see Beneil versus Makhachev going? Makhachev 30-27 decision, probably, I would think.
Yeah, I think he would wrestle him and just kind of grind him down. I don't know. Beneil there, his grappling is good enough to defend and maybe just get mauled for 3 rounds. So yeah, But there's always that factor with Beneil, man. He's a wild card. Like you don't know when he's gonna win when he wins. So it's just so unorthodox. So Makhachev might have a problem with him, but yeah, I think he'll control him with that wrestling.
Who should Edson Barbosa fight next? And 10th round suggests Bryce Mitchell. I think that makes sense.
That's
kind of a step up for Bryce, but I also think you could do Shane Burgos and Mitchell as well. That would be a fun fight.
Yeah, I just don't want to see Mitchell fight a striker. I don't know why.
Because you want to see the battle of the grounds. That's why it's unfortunate. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but Ryan Hall and Mitchell would be a great fight.
Exactly, right? Maybe they can make that fight after he beats Minner or somebody. I don't know, but yeah, Mitchell versus Ryan Hall. Mitchell versus where's Chrome Gracie, man? Like, is he even signed to the UFC?
I don't know.
That's a good question. Somebody call the bat phone to the Diaz brothers and see what's happening.
Who should Adrian Yanez fight next if he beats Grant? Anyone in the top 15. It's long over. If he gets this win, he's long overdue for someone in the top 15. I don't know who that would be, but there we go. RDA had to fight Kevin Lee. Completely different circumstances, though. Lee's a lot younger. We're talking about Lee moving up. RDA had already had a couple fights at welterweight, so completely different circumstances. There's no indication that Ferguson said he wants to go to 170. Fans are just making this up because he's lost a couple at lightweight. I think lightweight's a better weight class for him. I don't think he'd do very well at welterweight, if we're being honest here. There's a lot of really good wrestlers. There's guys that, think of the guys that have taken down Ferguson already. Like you look at like Oliveira. Granted, Oliveira's the champ, but you look at like Dariush taking down Ferguson and controlling him. How do you think a guy at welterweight would do against Ferguson? It would be much easier, I think.
Yeah, I think the power is different too. So it's not good for him.
I think Dawkins needs one more fight if he beats Lewis, personally.
He will. I think the UFC probably sees that too. Like, he's going to fight Lewis. If he beats Lewis, they're going to put him against someone that's coming off a win or a loss in that top 3. But yeah, if he gets one more win, man, his rise has been kind of similar to like a Cyril Gane if he continues winning, right?
Yeah. Should the UFC double book Khamzat, Magny in December and Burns for February? No, they shouldn't do that. Here's the problem with the Magny fight that I see is that, like, I know you want him to keep active, but like a Magny win, it kind of leaves me in the same spot that he would be in since beating Li Jingliang. Like, I know Magny beat him, but still, it's like, I just feel like that doesn't do much. Khamzat's next fight has got to be one that's going to, like, he's on the fast track. Give him a fast track fight. I know he wants to fight right away, but you got to be careful about this. And by the way, that outlet that reported that Burns and Khamzat's like a done deal, I've heard the opposite. I heard that Burns is still on the shelf and he needs some time off, and that he's looking at maybe like you said there, February. Because I believe that report was suggesting the December card, right? And I know Khamzat's ready, but Burns needs some more time off. So, and I just think that's a bad fight in general with Burns, because like I've explained, if Burns wins, then what do? Do you give him the rematch with Usman? You'd have to. Right? Because he would have decisively beat Wonderboy, then he beats Khamzat, and then we would get a rematch with Usman in less than a year or close to a year. I don't know. I'm not in a rush to see an Usman Burns rematch, especially with Usman having fought rematches his last couple fights, right? Like, it's been Woodley, Colby, Burns, or Masvidal, Burns, Masvidal, and then we get another rematch. I don't want to see that. I want to see some new blood with Usman at this point.
I don't want to see double bookings of any fighter. I feel like that's disrespectful to the other fighters that he's booking, man. It's like, what the hell? Like, this dude's not gonna take no damage. He's gonna smash Magny in December and then go and smash Burns in February. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is at the top of the division too. It's so disrespectful.
Mitchell Ortega eventually wouldn't be a terrible one. Mitchell's got to work in his striking, but yes, I agree with you that would be a really fun fight. Chris Dawkins' rise is almost the same as Gane, except way more overlooked. Is he being overlooked, though? He's getting a main event against Derek Lewis. To me, he's not really being overlooked. If anything, it's, they see something in Dawkins and they're giving him this opportunity. I was shocked when they made this fight because of on Lewis's end. Like, I realize Lewis is, he is where he is in his career. Like, the chances of him fighting for a title again are probably pretty slim, but I figured they would have given him a more of a notable matchup, like in terms of like name value, because Dawkins is a dangerous fight. And in fact, I think Dawkins wins that fight. So that's where it's kind of like, a bit surprising that he took it, but no, I think Dawkins is getting plenty of respect with the fact that he's even getting this opportunity. So there we go.
Yeah, he's getting a lot of respect, and I think Dawkins has earned the fight.
Three more questions. I don't have to take my kid to school today, so I got a little bit more time. He's actually sick, so hope my little guy's feeling better. Kelly, who should Luke fight? Good question. He was the backup for the title fight. With Edwards out, not wanting to fight, maybe they do. I don't know. It depends what the UFC wants to do.
They do Covington.
Covington and Luke?
Yeah, because I feel like the UFC is going to put back together the Edwards Masvidal fight for early next year. and then you don't want to sit around forever, right? Because I don't think they're gonna do the Ultimate Fighter. They're not. People
Even if they're not,
it.
you still got to do that fight. You have to do that fight. We may never get this fight. How rare is it in this sport that you get two people who used to train together and now don't like each other? Like we're getting that with Gon and Ngannou, but like it rarely happens. These are two of the biggest fighters in the weight class. It would be a huge missed opportunity if they don't make that. Like Luque and Covington. I mean, what's Covington going to even say in the trash talk leading up? Oh, you're a traitor because you were born in New Jersey and you went to Brazil. Yeah. Like that's not exciting. Whereas with Masvidal, you abandon your kids, or, all that stuff, like all this, like, you got to do Masvidal and Covington. You just have to. Like, I know Masvidal's, to me, Covington's way further ahead than Masvidal is in terms of the rankings and his skill set. And I know Covington probably wins that, but don't screw this up. You don't get opportunities like this often. Take advantage of it. Get these two guys to fight. We nearly missed, and it wasn't even the same when it got booked. We nearly missed Woodley and Covington. That was a huge blunder on the UFC's end. Don't screw this up. Do Masvidal and Covington. Luque can fight Usman or whatever. I don't know. They'll figure something out. He's in a good spot, so he's got nothing to worry about. So, two more questions here, and then we'll get out of here, guys. When will Korean Zombie return, and is Allen the only option? Well, he's running out of opponents. Allen might be a decent fight for him, although it's ranked way lower than. Well, actually, no. Yeah, where's Ige ranked? I guess they're probably around the same, but.
Yeah. Not many options for the Korean Zombie at this moment because Yair, he's probably going to be out. His foot looked like it was broken, and he probably has some other injuries from that fight. Holloway just fought Ortega. He lost to him, and those are the three guys ahead of him, right? Yeah. So either he fights the winner of Cater Chikaze, maybe, if he waits around. But if he wants to fight now, he fight for the title. He fights Volkanovski.
Overlooked by the media, fans probably. Every time media talks about the new wave of heavyweights, they only mention Ghana. No, they don't. Dawkins gets mentioned all the time. Come on. I don't know what you're watching, man. Seriously, but like Dawkins gets mentioned a lot. You and I have interviewed Dawkins how many times? Yeah. Like we're doing our fair share. No, you're off here, man. I don't agree with you. He's getting plenty of love from the media, and he's also getting, like I said, he's getting this main event. That's part of it, is the fact that they're recognizing how good this guy is. We made his debut last year, I think.
Yeah.
The fact that he's even in this main event, yeah, exactly. So it's crazy. Sinister Story, what do you think is going to be the next big MMA moment? We had Connor getting KO'd, Chandler signing the UFC, Cyborg going to Bellator, Hamzat's rise. What could be next? Wherever Kayla Harrison goes, I think that's the next big thing.
No, I think the next big thing is Amanda Nunes getting finished and just
shocked by I like it.
I think that's the next big moment, man. I feel like it might not happen this year, but it's going to happen soon.
Last question here. Looks like Ngannou doesn't like Cyril. There you go, tough coaches. They're fighting in January. They're close to it, aren't they? They're not. The Tough's gonna. They're not even filming Tough yet. No. And plus, like, two guys who they speak English, but it's not like it doesn't translate well. You got to look at the audience that's watching Tough is like, people that want to see like drama and all that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to say this is the most polite way possible because I don't want to insult the fan base, but like, it's people that like seeing like, oh, the guy got drunk and said something borderline cancelable, like that's what people like. That's not going to you're not going to see that from either guy. And what's the worst that Ngannou's done? He walked by and didn't acknowledge Gon when they were walking by. Like so that's
corny.
Yeah, it was super corny. Like, it's not like he came out and said, said something like really mean to Gon. He didn't do that. So there we go. Okay, and then Habib is never returning, by the way. Just saying that. All right, good time to end the show. Thanks so much to everyone who's watched. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. If we missed your question, leave it in the comments. Hit us up on social media. We're always accessible and easy to get a hold of. JHK, what do you got going on? You're still in Thailand, right? Like, when are you going back?
I go back this Saturday. So our next show, I'll be back at home doing it from home, which is great to be.
I'm killing it, man.
Yeah, man, just follow this channel because all my content is here. And
that's
it. And follow James because James be doing his thing out there. So
I got like 6 interviews today. It's a busy one. At Lynch on Sports, Twitter, Instagram. You know where to get a hold of me. I'll be doing my Q&A on Thursday on my second channel. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. We will be back here a week today previewing another upcoming notable fight. If there's a fight you guys want us to preview, just hit us up. We're always open to suggestion here. I'm James Lynch. He is JHK. Thanks to everyone who tuned in here today. We really appreciate it. We'll see you next week, and enjoy the rest of your week.